Chapter 127. Fu Yunruo met Wenwen's condemning gaze and felt very guilty. She smiled fawningly and said, "Wenwen, your uncle Yu and I are dating." Wenwen complained, "Were you not going to tell me if I didn't find out?" What was the matter? Wenwen suddenly realized that his mother and uncle Yu were occasionally clingy. He found it strange. Wasn't his mother still awkward with Uncle Yu before? Why did she suddenly become shy? Did she do something bad behind his back? In the end, Wenwen was able to find out the truth just by probing. His mother and Sai Yu were dating. It had been a few days and he wasn't the first to know. Wenwen was so angry that he couldn't be coaxed. Fu Yunruo hurriedly coaxed him. "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy didn't mean to not tell you." She was going to tell him, but wasn't it delayed because she had to meet his grandparents? She was only thinking about that matter and forgot for a moment. Wenwen still felt very wronged. He felt that it must be because he didn't let his mother and Sai Yu get close to each other and didn't let them talk. Therefore, his mother thought that he would oppose them and wanted to hide it from him. Tempage, was he such an unreasonable person? "Mommy swears that I won't hide anything from you in the future. Baby, please forgive me this time, okay? Baby, you are the most sensible and magnanimous baby in the world. Mommy loves you the most. Baby, it's Mommy's fault. Forgive Mommy, okay?" Fu Yunruo finally gritted her teeth. "If you can't accept it, then I'll break up with him immediately." Sai Yu, who was originally watching from the side, was speechless. Hey. Was he so casual? Wenwen saw Sai Yu's black face and pouted. Hey, he was his mother's most important baby. Therefore, Wenwen said generously, "There's no need to break up. It's not my fault. I forgive you. I knew it. It must be Uncle Yu who led you astray." Wenwen pulled a long face and said seriously, "It's okay to fall in love, but you can't learn bad things from him." Fu Yunruo nodded, Yes, I definitely won't learn it." Sai Yu. Stupid brat. Fu Yun finally coaxed Wenwen to sleep before she heaved a sigh of relief. Sai Yu saw that the little rascal was not around, so he hugged Fu Yun from behind. He rested his chin on Fu Yun's shoulder and said pitifully, "You want to break up with me?" Fu Yunruo hurriedly said, "I was just coaxing Wenwen." Of course, if the child really did not agree, then what was there to talk about? "I don't care. You hurt me. You have to compensate me." Fu Yunruo's heart was tired. After coaxing the little one, she still had to coax the big one. She said helplessly, "Then what do you want?" Like this, Sai Yu lifted Fu Yunruo's chin and tilted it slightly. He tilted his head and lowered it. His voice disappeared between his lips and teeth. Fu Yunruo interacted more with Sai Yu's parents and understood their character. He no longer had any scruples and could peacefully fall in love with Sai Yu. Ever since they kissed, their feelings for each other deepened and the two of them became even more intimate. The island was much more lively than before. After obtaining Fu Yunruo's consent, Xie Zhiyun asked some of the children in the family who were closer to Wenwen to accompany her. Wenwen needed playmates, and the children of the same age in the Sai family basically grew up together. This way, their relationship would be even deeper. Wenwen's background was a little special, so they prepared to let Wenwen get to know a few children of the same age. After they were familiar with each other, they would then play with the others. Although it was not explicitly said, Fu Yunruo could see that Sai Yu and his parents wanted to nurture Wenwen. Fu Yunruo saw that Wenwen did not reject it, so she did not interfere. She knew that Wenwen was a smart child and had his own opinions. Therefore, she would ask for his opinion when it came to her own matters. Therefore, Xie Zhiyun picked two children of the same age from the main family and brought them over. It could be said that they were worried sick about Wenwen. Children did not know good and evil. They might accept or reject children who suddenly appeared. They could not bear to see Wenwen suffer any grievances, so they took one step at a time. This time, the children who came were close to the side branches of the two families. They both had children of the same age. Because their close elders were by their side, the children did not feel afraid. Instead, they looked around curiously. After Wenwen knew that he was about to have playmates, he placed great importance on it and prepared gifts early as a greeting gift. The two children were older than Wen. One was 5 years old, and the other was 6 years old. They were fair and chubby, and their facial features were very handsome. Fu Yunruo could not help but take a few more glances at the child called Sai Tang. This child looked like Sai Yu. More accurately, he looked like a member of the Sai family. The other child also had some characteristics of a member of the Sai family. Fu Yunruo looked at Wen. Only Wen had completely inherited her looks and did not look like a member of the Sai family at all. Perhaps it was because he spent so much time with Sai Yu that he unconsciously had some of his aura. Of course, some small actions were 100% similar. The children were very happy when they met. Sai Tang and Sai Zhongsheng also expressed their friendliness to Wen. Soon, Wen brought the two freshly baked brothers to play. They had never been to this island before, but Wen had already played before. Naturally, she knew how to bring them to play. Although the three children ran far away, they were still within the sight of the adults, so there was nothing to worry about. In the beginning, they were still playing very harmoniously. However, not long after, Wen and Sai Tang had a conflict. This was because Wen heard Sai Zhongsheng ask Sai Tang, "Will fifth uncle still adopt him as his son?" Sai Yu was ranked fifth in their generation. Although he was a direct descendant and also the head of the family, in the family, they still addressed each other according to seniority. Sai Tang said with certainty, "Definitely." Actually, Sai Tang did not know if the main family would adopt him, but the uncle and aunt who raised him said that he would definitely be adopted. He had always believed it without a doubt. As for why he had such a big chance, it was because he was an orphan. His parents died in an accident when he was still a baby, so he was raised by his uncle and aunt. To be precise, he was raised by the family, and his uncle and aunt existed as guardians. In recent years, there were occasional rumors in the family that the main family was about to choose a child from the branch family to adopt. As an orphan and a child who looked like a member of the Sai family, Sai Tang had a big chance. When heard what they said, she instantly exploded. "That's my father, not yours. He won't adopt a child. He already had a biological son, so why did he still want to adopt one? Did he despise him?" Wen exploded in anger, feeling offended. Sai Tang said confidently, "Fifth uncle will definitely adopt me. In the future, he will be my father. Since everyone said so, then it must be true. He would also be someone who had a father in the future." "You're talking nonsense." "I'm not. Fifth uncle is my father. Mine. His mine. Mine." The voices of the two children, who were about the same age, were getting louder and louder. Sai Yu and Fu Yun heard the commotion and walked over. "What's wrong?" Fu Yun looked at Wen and felt that it was strange. Weren't they having fun just now? Why did they suddenly quarrel? As soon as Wen saw Sai Yu, she ran over and asked angrily, "Do you have any other children other than me?" Sai Yu was speechless. Sai Yu stroked Wen's angry little head and smoothed her hair. "I only have one child, and that's you. Did you hear that?" Wen instantly looked proudly at the child who had shrunk his neck. "My father only has one child, and that's me. That's him. Fifth uncle." Sai Tang shrunk his neck and looked timidly at Sai Yu. He didn't dare to argue in front of the adults, so his eyes turned red from being wronged. Fu Yun looked around and asked, "What's going on?" She looked at Sai Yu. What was going on? Wen grabbed Fu Yun. "Mom." He told Fu Yun what they had said and then said, "He actually wants to adopt a child. Wasn't having him enough?" Wen felt wronged. Why did he still want to adopt a child? Wouldn't that mean that not only would he have to give away his father, but he would also give away his mother? Fu Yun looked at Sai Yu with a questioning gaze. She believed that Sai Yu had a plan in mind. If he really wanted to adopt a child, there must be a reason. Sai Yu wasn't in a hurry to explain. Instead, he asked Wen happily, "Who did you just tell them that I was to you?" "My father." "Who?" "Father." Sai Yu responded with a ripple at the end. Wen. Chapter 128. When realized what he had just said, his little face instantly turned as red as a monkey's butt. His little eyes wandered for a long time, then he said righteously, "Yes, it's my father." "So what?" Although Wen was also very surprised that he had blurted it out, since he had already said it once, it was natural for him to say it a second or third time. Wen shouted crisply, "Daddy!" Millimeter Sai Yu smiled and touched Wen's face. "Good boy." Sai Yu finally heard Wen call him daddy. It was really not easy. At this moment, he felt that the burden on his shoulders had become much heavier, and he felt the weight of responsibility. Sai Tang looked at Wen and then at Sai Yu. His expression of envy was overflowing. Would fifth uncle still adopt him when he had a biological son? Sai Yu touched Wen's soft hair and only retracted his hand before he was about to explode. His gaze turned to the other two children. However, he did not say anything in front of the children. He asked someone to send the two children to their elders. Then, he explained to Fu Yun and Wen that he had no intention of adopting other children. As for why such a rumor had spread, perhaps it was because his mother had jokingly mentioned it before, and it had been remembered by people with ulterior motives. Sai Yu told them about Sai Tang's background and directly said that everything for the child was paid for by the family. He did not have to worry about food or clothing, and he also had a biological uncle who treated him well and was his guardian. This child did not affect the interests of his uncle's small family. Instead, they had to treat him better in order to gain more benefits. Thus, he lived very well at home. Sai Yu also had children of his own, so naturally, he would not adopt them. Even if he did not, he would consider it 10 years later. He did not feel that he had extra love to share with other children. Just when alone was enough to give him a headache. If there was another one, he would have to forgive him. When heard about Sai Tang's background, he understood him very well. After all, he was also an orphan in his previous life. However, understanding was one thing. He wasn't so generous as to share his parents with him. He only wanted to treat him better in the future. Fu Yunruo also felt that it was quite pitiful for this child to have no parents at such a young age. However, he had his family to support him and his biological uncle was around. It was not Sai Yu's turn to take care of him. Therefore, she did not overstep her boundaries and express her opinion. After clearing up the misunderstanding and smoothing out Wen's feathers, Sai Yu went to deal with the rumor. He was not going to argue with the child, but the elders still had to give him a warning. At the very least, such rumors could not continue, and they could not speak without thinking in front of the child and instill some unrealistic ideas. The next day, Sai Tang and Sai Zhongxing behaved like children who had done something wrong. They became much more reserved in front of Wen. After being admonished by their parents, they were no longer as lively. It was Wen who took the initiative to play with her two brothers. After all, they were all children. After a short while, they were playing together happily. Sai Tang already knew that what his aunt had said in the past was wrong. She even apologized to him solemnly. Sai Tang was very disappointed, but he still forgave his aunt. As for Wen, he could not bring himself to hate her. This younger brother was too good and too cute. It made him subconsciously want to dote on him. Now that he had such a fair, chubby, and soft younger brother, Sai Tang felt that it was fine if he was not adopted. It was fine if he could stay by his younger brother's side. Fu Yunruo and the other two stayed on the island for a month. In the end, Sai Zhang and Xie Zhiyun were reluctant to part with them, so they embarked on their journey back to China. After returning to China, Fu Yunruo became even busier. She was busy distributing gifts and local specialties to her friends and relatives. At the same time, she also had to pick up her almost stagnant career. She posted some photos of the scenery on the forum and shared her schedule with her fans for nearly a month. Then, she set a time to do a live broadcast. Fu Yunruo browsed the news on the internet. The popularity of the three of them had already died down. New Entertainment News. Fu Yunruo started her live broadcast again after more than a month. Her popularity did not decrease at all. Instead, it became even more lively. Many of them were fans who had snuck in because of Wen and Sai Yu. Fu Yunruo picked a few questions and explained that she had disappeared for so long to bring Wen out to relax. She did not answer too many questions. She pretended not to see some of the questions that involved personal matters. Then, she officially started her live broadcast. Fu Yunruo quickly found the feeling of doing a live broadcast. Gradually, the audience stopped asking her about things other than the content of her live broadcast. There were fewer comments on the bullet screen. At this moment, most of the people who were talking were her fans of many years. She extended the duration of her live broadcast and only ended it after 3 hours. Sai Yu immediately went forward to pass her a glass of water. "Thank you for your hard work." "Thank you." After returning, Fu Yunruo also personally told the people close to her that she was dating Sai Yu. Sai Yu openly appeared by Fu Yunruo's side as Fu Yunruo's boyfriend. Fu Yunruo asked curiously, "Don't you have to work?" She already knew his identity. She also knew that he would occasionally disappear. When he was not filming, he would spend most of his time dealing with work. She felt that as the tyrant of tyrants, managing such a big business, it was right for him to be so busy all day. How could he have so much time to date? However, on second thought, this world was not scientific in the first place. She could not look at it with the eyes of ordinary people. Work is important, but my wife is more important. Sai Yu raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Why? You don't believe that your boyfriend can balance it out?" Fu Yunruo rolled her eyes. She had worried about him for nothing. He was always by her side. Even if he did not get tired of it, she would get tired of him sooner or later. Fu Yunruo did not accompany him all the time. She had too many things to do. However, when she looked up occasionally, she would see Sai Yu by her side. This feeling was very beautiful and very happy. However, there was still something troubling. The moment Fu Yunruo returned, she found out about something that was not good for her. Fang Shueruo had already been released. She had been changed to an execution outside the prison because she was pregnant. Counting the days, the female lead of the second novel should be arriving around this time. She could only sigh at the female lead's strength. Even so, the butterfly could not change her birth. Fu Yunruo thought about it. It should be the night of the charity gala. She also had a thought in her heart. She knew that the female lead of the original novel would not go offline so easily. However, Fu Yunruo was fearless now. Fang Shueruo was the mother and daughter's biggest backer. The Fu family was not controlled by them and changed to the surname Fang. Fu Zonghong was still alive and well. Furthermore, he and Fang wanting to divorce. The Fu family had nothing to do with them. As for the Chang family, Wen was not an ant that could be easily crushed now. He had a backer. The Chang family could not touch him. Fu Yunruo lamented that the male lead, Chang Zhuyu, was deeply in love with Fang Shueruo. He ignored his family's objections and insisted on being responsible for Fang Shueruo. He wanted to marry Fang Shueruo. If there was anyone in this world who still treated Fang Shueruo the same way as before, it was probably Chang Zhuyu. Furthermore, she was pregnant with his child now. However, because of the Chang family's firm opposition, Chang Zhuyu finally moved out with Fang Shueruo. For some reason, they actually moved to Fu Yunruo's neighborhood. When Fu Yunruo heard this news, she felt as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat. The only consolation was that their villas were located in the north and south respectively. They were quite far apart from each other, so they wouldn't run into each other often. Sai Yu already knew about this, but he did not do anything and did not tell Fu Yunruo. He did not want to affect her mood. It was rare for her to be so happy. Why would he want to ruin it? After returning, Fu Yunruo and Wen Ruo moved back to their own homes and did not stay in Sai Yu's house anymore. Even if she was told about this, it did not change her mind. Sai Yu had no choice but to move in with them and live in the villa next door. The adults did not tell Wen about these troublesome matters. Since they lived in the same neighborhood, there would be a day when they would bump into each other. When saw Fang Shueruo appear in his line of sight, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Wasn't this woman in jail? Why was she here? Fang Shueruo was wearing a loose white dress. When she saw Fu Yunruo and Wen, she subconsciously touched her belly. She was already 4 months pregnant. When she put her hand on her belly, One could see the curve of her belly. Fang Shueruo supported herself with one hand and touched her belly with the other. She walked towards Fu Yunruo and Fang Shueruo. Chang Zhuyu, who was at the side, supported Fang Shueruo nervously and asked her to slow down. Fu Yunruo held Wen Wen's hand and took 2 steps back. Stop. Fu Yunruo told her not to get so close to her and to pay attention to the distance. People sympathized with the weak. If she used the child in her belly as an excuse, she would not be able to explain herself. When the time came, people would forget what she had done and accuse her of being unforgiving. She did not even let the child off. She said bluntly, "Please stay away from us." Fang Shueruo saw that she could not get close to them and could only stop. Brother Chang saw that I was feeling unwell and brought me out to relax. I didn't expect to see you. After being imprisoned for a period of time, her face was much paler and thinner than before. Of course, it could also be because of her pregnancy. Fang Shueruo lowered her eyes and said in a low voice, "What happened in the past? I was wrong. I let you down. So I'll accept whatever you want to do to me. But I beg you, can you let my mother off?" Fu Yunruo frowned. Her face was full of displeasure. It was really strange. She did not know what she was talking about. She did not do anything to them. Was she thinking too much? Chang Zhuyu could not stand Fu Yunruo's petty and unforgiving manner at all. He frowned and said, "Shuer has already apologized to you. Can't you forgive her?" Fu Yunruo did not even have the desire to speak. Saiyu said, "Look for me if you are unhappy. My Ruo does not want to see you." Chang Zhuyu looked at Saiyu coldly. However, before he could say anything, the community security guards noticed the commotion. The first thing they did when they walked over was to ask Fu Yunruo and her family out of concern. "Miss Fu, did they make things difficult for you?" The Chang family was a prominent family in the capital. If they wanted to live in this community, they naturally had their ways. Although the security guards had opinions, they did not have the right to speak. Chapter 129. Fu Yun could not help but complain, "These people are really too much. Even the sun doesn't have as much presence as them." Saiyu said, "Don't worry, they won't be free for long. Why are they still coming to this neighborhood? Are the other residents willing?" Fu Yun found it strange. After all, the people who lived here were all famous people. Why would they be willing to let Fang Shui live here? The Chang family still has some influence in the capital. Fu Yun knew in her heart, but she still felt very unhappy. These people were really like cockroaches that could not be killed. They were too disgusting. However, Fu Yun did not want to move in order to avoid them. After all, she liked this place very much and was used to it. Even if she moved away, she might not be able to find a suitable place. Fu Yun complained to Saiyu, but she quickly threw it to the back of her mind. She lowered her head and noticed Wen Wen's unusual silence. She asked, "Wen Wen? What's wrong? Are you scared?" Wen Wen looked up and gave Fu Yun a cute smile. "No." Fu Yun felt that it was a little strange. She was about to ask, but her attention was quickly diverted by something else. There was a person standing at the door. When he saw them walking back, he walked towards them. Fu Yun recognized that this was her fan, Lin Ji, who lived in the same neighborhood. Lin Ji saw Fu Yun and Wen Wen and finally smiled. Long time no see. Ever since Wen Wen was injured and hospitalized, Fu Yun had not returned to this neighborhood. Those who could visit her were all very close to her. Lin Ji had also applied to visit her previously, but he was rejected at that time, so he had been waiting for Fu Yun and the rest to come back. Long time no see. Fu Yun did not know that Lin Ji had gone to the hospital to visit her but was rejected. She was also quite happy to see Lin Ji. They just exchanged a few pleasantries and asked about each other's recent situation. They did not have much to talk about, so they just stood there and chatted awkwardly. Saiyu reached out to hold her hand. Lin Ji noticed it immediately. "You guys." Fu Yunruo lowered her head and looked at the hand that she was holding. Then, she said generously, "We are together." Saiyu's lips curled up in delight. "Oh. Well, it's pretty good. Congratulations." Lin Ji was stunned for a moment. Then, he concealed his disappointment and sincerely congratulated her. Thank you. Don't tell anyone about this for the time being. Fu Yunruo exhorted. She didn't want to be on the hot search list again after finally coming down. Lin Ji nodded and promised that he wouldn't tell anyone. After that, Lin Ji took his leave. Fu Yun and the others returned to the house. When Fu Yun saw that Sai Yu was still holding her hand, she said, "All right, he's gone. Can you let go of me now?" Sai Yu said calmly, "It's right and proper for me to hold my girlfriend's hand." Fu Yunruo glanced at him. Forget it. If they were taught well, it would also promote healthy competition. After all, schools were the least likely place to fight and scheme. There were countless pairs of eyes watching the development of the next generation. Fu Yunruo asked carefully and hesitated when she heard that the school was in his hometown. Then, wouldn't she have to be separated from Wen? She wouldn't have to go to his hometown, right? Sai Yu didn't force Fu Yunruo to make a decision immediately. He quickly changed the topic. "I will be busy with work for a period of time starting tomorrow." Fu Yunruo heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly nodded. Go ahead. It was better to go to work. If he accompanied her all day and didn't do anything, she was going to suspect that he was going to go bankrupt. Don't worry, I can take good care of myself. Yes, you have to take good care of yourself too. Sai Yu nodded with a smile. His gaze turned to Wen, who was squatting at the side and playing with a small shovel. How many days should I take care of Wen? Fu Yunruo and Wen raised their heads and looked over at the same time. Children can play anywhere. It's tiring for you to take care of them all day. Why don't I take care of them for a few days? You can also gather with your friends. Sai Yu was very considerate. Even a mother needed private space. No matter how cute the children were, they would feel tired if they spent all their time with the children. Wen was very curious about how Sai Yu worked. He raised his small shovel and said loudly, "I want to go. Won't I disturb you?" Fu Yunruo hesitated. Sai Yu said with certainty, "No." Thus, Wen carried her small school bag as she wished and followed Sai Yu to work. There were many businesses under the Sai family's name in the capital. Even outsiders didn't know about them. Sai Yu brought Wen to an office building with more than 100 floors in the center of the capital. This office building belonged to the Sai family. There were different companies on each floor. Many of them seemed unrelated, but they were actually one of the Sai family's businesses. Sai Yu had an exclusive office on one floor. Usually, he would come here to work when necessary. However, most of the time, he would hold remote meetings at home. Sai Yu asked someone to move a chair to the side for Wen to sit. Then, he asked someone to report on official business. He had a special group of secretaries who could help him handle some of the less important work, except for those that required his personal approval. Wen listened to the reports of the elite men and women taking turns. He listened attentively. Wen used to run a company himself, so he knew a little about these reports. If there was a difference, the biggest one was probably the numbers. He used tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of units, while the others used hundreds of millions. However, the money wasn't in front of him. It was just a number, so Wen didn't feel much. However, when he heard the next report, he instantly pricked up his ears. Ever since the Chang family's investment failed some time ago, they have become more cautious. I'm not a good person, and I don't expect you to be a pure good person. After all, Wen would be in his position in the future. If he was too weak and kind, it would not be a good thing. Wen looked at Sai Yu. Her big round eyes seemed to be shocked as they widened even more. Was it okay to teach the child like this? Which parent would want their child to become a bad person? Although Wen was not a good person and had done bad things before, his mother wanted him to be a good child. He had always tried his best to be a good child. However, Sai Yu did not expect him to be a good person. However, even if we are to be bad, we have to be honest. Sai Yu was addicted to pinching Wen's face. He hadn't pinched her little face in a long time. He really missed it. Wen finally reacted and hurriedly covered her face. Her face was red from the pinching. However, how were they going to be honest? Wen's heart was full of doubts. However, Sayu did not answer him. Instead, he brought him along and let him see how he dealt with the Chang family. If Fu Yun did not know what the father and son were doing, she would have thought that Wen would stay with Sayu for at most 2 days before returning. However, day after day passed. Wen left punctually with Sayu every day and returned at night. Fu Yun was speechless. She suddenly felt a little jealous. Wen only clung to his father and not her now that he had a father. After autumn, winter came quickly. In the blink of an eye, they changed into thick winter clothes. Not long after, the first snow fell in the capital. After that, it snowed a few times and the ground was covered with a thick layer of snow. When saw the white snow fluttering in the air, he could not help but feel nostalgic. Then, he excitedly wanted to go out and play in the snow. Fu Yun wrapped Wen into a ball before letting him out to play in the courtyard. However, he could only play for 20 minutes. Fu Yun sighed. Unknowingly, they had been in the capital for almost a year. Time had passed so quickly. However, in retrospect, many things had happened in the past year. They had gained a foothold in the capital. Wen had become a well-known celebrity and had also acknowledged her biological father. She also had a boyfriend. Yuan Xin ran over in the heavy snow. He complained to Fu Yun that Wen was so popular during the summer holidays. He should have taken on some advertisement endorsements and participated in some activities. In the end, he walked the path of his old father. Other than filming, he basically did not participate in any other activities. Both the adult and the child were so willful. If they had done their business properly, they would have been well-known international superstars all over the world. This year, they were invited to participate in the Spring Festival Gala. He tried his best to persuade them but could not get them to agree. Yuan Xin grumbled about this for a long time. This time, he came over because Wen's Shenxia movie was about to be screened. Although he was only a small supporting role and played the role of the male lead when he was young, because of his popularity, the director specially increased the duration of the movie. During the publicity, he also brought his popularity into the movie. The Shenxia movie would be released during the new year. The director wanted Wen to participate in the publicity in the capital. However, Fu Yun and Sayu rejected him. It was one thing for children to like acting. He only needed to act in the movie. There was no need for him to participate in other messy things. Yuan Xin did not insist. He changed the topic and asked if they wanted to film a public service announcement. Public service announcements were different from others. They were official in nature. Although they would not be paid, it was good for their reputation. After Fu Yun understood, she did not have any objections. Yuan Xin was inclined to let Wen participate. Seeing that Fu Yun did not object to this and that Wen and Sayu had agreed, he happily went to make the arrangements. However, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he stayed at the Fu family home and watched them live a leisurely and peaceful life. His slightly impetuous heart also calmed down. Then, he smiled and built a snowman with Wen. Seeing that it was about time, Fu Yun called Wen into the house. Wen ran into the house with a red face. Fu Yun gave him a cup of hot water and touched his face and hands to make sure that he was not cold. Sayu was also staying at the Fu family home. Besides going to the villa next door to sleep at night, he spent most of his time at the Fu family home. Yuan Xin followed him into the house and started talking to Sayu. They talked about retiring from the industry. This was Sayu's plan a long time ago. He was supposed to retire from the industry last year, but because of Wen, he delayed it. But now, it was time to retire from the industry. Acting was Sayu's hobby. For this hobby, he had been in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years. However, this was also because it did not hinder him from inheriting the family business. Otherwise, his family would not be so carefree. In the past, it could be said that he used all his free time outside of work to act. In the future, his focus would be on his family and business, and he would not be able to care about the entertainment industry. In the future, Yuan Xin would not take on any work for Sai Yu. Yuan Xin was old, and besides taking care of Wen, he would not take on any newcomers. The rest of his energy would be spent on managing the company's brokerage department. Fu Yun confirmed with Sai Yu, "Are you really going to retire from the entertainment industry?" In the past, when she saw that he did not do anything, she thought that Sai Yu was going to give up on this idea. "Yes, I did not intend to stay in the industry for the rest of my life." Fu Yun nodded and respected his decision. Wen saw that they had already planned for next year and felt regretful. He wanted to work with Sai. Daddy. They had only worked together once, and he wanted to do it many times. Wen could not help but feel a little disappointed. Fu Yun saw that Wen was unhappy, so she changed the topic. "It's almost the new year. How do we plan to celebrate the new year?" This year was the first new year they had spent in the village. Fu Yun had originally planned to bring Wen back to the village to celebrate the new year. However, the village was busy now. As there were big investors investing in projects there, and with the support of the government, it was very efficient. Now, the village was replanning and building villas. In the village, there would be major projects and renovations in the next few years. There were construction sites everywhere, and it was not convenient to go back for the new year. Hence, Uncle Mai and Auntie Mai did not want them to come back until the village was built. Uncle Guo was not prepared to go back, so they decided to spend the new year in the capital. When heard that it was the new year, he liked it the most. In the past, he had followed the older children in the village to visit every family for New Year's greetings and to ask for red packets and snacks. If he did not return to the village this year, there would not be such fun. Thinking of this, Wen felt a little melancholic. He felt that his younger brothers had almost forgotten about him. After all, they were all children. Who could remember their childhood friends so clearly? They were playful and forgetful, unlike him, Sai. However, with Mommy, it did not matter where they went. Moreover, there were new family members this year. Wen glanced at Sai Yu. Sai Yu said, "Let's celebrate the new year at home." His hometown still had the custom of celebrating the new year. His parents asked Sai Yu in private, hoping that Fu Yun and Wen would go back for the new year so that they could officially introduce their identities. However, Sai Yu rejected them. He had already figured out Fu Yun's character. No matter what, he could not be too impatient. He had to do it step by step. Otherwise, it would cause her to dislike him. He had just let her meet his parents and accept them this year. This progress was just right. If he let her go home with him, it would not be good. In the future, if Fu Yun agreed to marry him, she would be the rightful mistress. At that time, it would be most appropriate for her to meet the rest of the family. When Fu Yun heard that Sai Yu was so considerate, she felt embarrassed. However, she could not ask him to bring Wen back to celebrate the new year with her grandparents. She only said, "If Uncle and Auntie Yun are free, you can come over to celebrate the new year with us." Sai Yu smiled and nodded. They will be very happy. Although they had discussed it, New Year's Day had just passed and there was still some time before the official New Year. Fu Yun was also a little busy. Although her career was not as good as Sai Yu's and could not even compare to Wen's, it had been steadily rising. She had also made a lot of money this year. Not long ago, she had just paid off her loan. Now, Tian was planning every day how to expand her studio. It couldn't be. How could an aristocratic family like the Chang family fall just like that? Fang Shui thought a lot of things at that moment. She even thought that the Chang family was setting up a trap to create an atmosphere of imminent bankruptcy so that she would want to retreat and abandon Chang Zhuyu. Because of this, Chang Zhuyu saw clearly that she despised the poor and loved the rich, and did not love him at all. This made him completely disappointed in her. If Fang Shui thought to herself, she would never be fooled. She would never give up the identity of Madame Chang that was already in her hands. The door opened with a click. Chang Zhuyu walked in with a tired face. He must have not rested well for a few days. The suit he was wearing was wrinkled. Fang Shui walked over with one hand on her waist and the other hand on her belly. She looked worried when she saw Chang Zhuyu. Brother Chang. When Chang Zhuyu saw Fang Shui, he hurried over to support her. Why did you come out? Brother Chang, I was worried about you. Fang Shui followed Chang Zhuyu and walked back slowly. She frowned and said, You haven't been home for a long time. I couldn't sleep well at night. I dreamed that something happened to you. Chang Zhuyu hurriedly said gently, I'm fine. I'm just a little busy with the company. Fang Shui sat down on the sofa with his help. You have to take good care of yourself. The child and I are very worried about you. Chang Zhuyu rubbed Fang Shui's belly and agreed. Fang Shui held Chang Zhuyu's hand and asked with concern, Brother Chang, tell me honestly. Is the company in a bad situation? I saw on the news that, Shui, don't worry. This is only temporary. I won't let you and your daughter suffer. I still have some savings. It may not be of much help, but it's still a small token of my appreciation. Chang Zhuyu's voice became even gentler. How can I take your money? Don't worry. It will be over soon. Fang Shui saw that he was determined not to take it. She frowned and said, If only I were a good match for you. Then I could help you. As Fang Shui spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. She bit her lip and said, Brother Chang, why don't you listen to Uncle and Auntie's arrangement and marry a lady of equal social status? I don't care, as long as you are fine. Before Fang Shui could finish her sentence, Chang Zhuyu hugged her with a heartbroken expression. Don't talk nonsense. I only want you. Those people are just adding insult to injury. When the Chang family recovers, none of them will be able to escape. Anger flashed in Chang Zhuyu's eyes. He had not been having a good time recently. He had been running around looking for partners for the company. Bad news about the company had spread and caused panic. The company's stock price had fallen continuously, and tens of billions of yuan had disappeared. Many people who had offended the Chang family and looked down on them had come to step on them. Chang Zhuyu had not thought much of it before. The business world was like a battlefield. They were not as powerful as the Chang family, so they could only accept it when the Chang family took the cake. He did not expect that those small companies who had once trembled in fear under the Chang family would dare to step on them. The ants that the Chang family had once looked down on had been twisted into a rope and bitten the Chang family until it hurt. There were also those who had jumped ship when the Chang family was in trouble. Chang Zhuyu made a mental note of them. When this crisis was over, he would deal with them one by one. They had probably forgotten the consequences of offending the Chang family. When this is over, we will hold a wedding of the century and let the whole world know that you are the woman that I, Chang Zhuyu, cherish. Fang Shui smiled through her tears. Of course I believe in you, Brother Chang. Suddenly, she seemed to have made up her mind. Brother Chang, let's get married. Chang Zhuyu was stunned. He stared blankly at Fang Shui. Fang Shui held his hand and looked at Chang Zhuyu with bright eyes. It's okay even if the Chang family can't get over this. I'm willing to suffer with you. I love you. Whether we are rich or poor, I want to be with you. This was the first time in many years that Chang Zhuyu had heard such a straightforward confession from Fang Shui. His breathing quickened. After a long while, he hugged Fang Shui excitedly. Did I hear wrongly? Shui, you have finally agreed to marry me. Chapter 132. I'm so happy. Shui, say that again. Can you say it again? Chang Zhuyu hugged Fang Shui and twirled her around excitedly. Fang Shui cried out in surprise and angrily punched him twice. She hugged him with both of her hands and refused to let go, looking completely dependent on him. Shui, can you say that again? Fang Shui's face turned red. She turned her head and said, Forget it if you didn't hear it. I heard it. I can't forget it. Chang Zhuyu placed Fang Shui on the sofa and half knelt in front of Fang Shui. Shui, you've finally agreed to marry me. I'm so happy. Ever since they got engaged, Chang Zhuyu had always wanted to get married as soon as possible. He had proposed several times but was rejected because Shui wanted to stand at the top of the entertainment industry before she agreed to marry him. Chang Zhuyu had tried his best to pave the way for Shui. Just as Shui was about to reach the top, her skyscraper collapsed in just a year. She went from being loved by everyone to being hated by everyone. He wanted to seek justice for Shui, but he couldn't even protect himself. Chang Zhuyu had always been a proud son of God. He had never suffered so much. In the past 2 years, everything went wrong for Chang Zhuyu. He couldn't even protect the woman he loved the most. Chang Zhuyu hated himself for being so helpless. He didn't have the face to propose to Shui. He couldn't help but wonder if Shui would dislike him if she saw him like this. But now, Shui actually agreed. Was he dreaming? Shui, you said you agreed to marry me, didn't you? Fang Shui couldn't help but laugh when she saw how eager he was. Yes, I agreed. Let's get married right away. Chang Zhuyu held Fang Shui's hand tightly. Fang Shui nodded. However, she suddenly thought of something and her smile gradually faded. Fang Shuiruo hesitated and said, Uncle and Auntie. She bit her lip and said gloomily, the daughter-in-law they want is not me. My reputation is a stain, forget it. I can't be a burden to you. Fang Shui forced a smile. You deserve better. Shui, don't belittle yourself. In my heart, you're the best. Chang Zhuyu said affectionately. Don't worry. They're just temporarily confused. My parents have been good to you, haven't they? They'll get over it. I won't let you suffer. Chang Zhuyu stroked Fang Shuiruo's belly. Moreover, you're carrying the Chang family's golden grandson. Shui, why don't you come home with me? My parents will definitely treat you very well for the sake of the child. Fang Shui wanted to use the child in her belly to make Chang Zhuyu and his parents accept her. Chang Zhuyu was the only son in the family. How could he not like children? Previously, she had thought wrongly and thought that she would definitely be wronged if she lived in the Chang family with her current identity. That was why she thought of a way to live alone. Now that she thought about it, if she was pregnant with the next generation of the Chang family and made her presence known in front of them, even if they had a grudge against her, for the sake of the child in her belly, they would not dare to go too far with her. Unfortunately, she had secretly checked at the hospital. It was a girl. It would be better if it was a boy. Fang Shui hesitated. But I'm not the rightful wife. Chang Zhuyu suddenly had an idea. Shui, let's get married first. After we get married, you'll be the rightful wife of the Chang family. Chang Zhuyu thought he had come up with a good idea, so he looked at Fang Shui expectantly. Is that okay? Yes. It'll be hard on you. Chang Zhuyu was full of guilt. I can't give you a grand wedding right away. Fang Shui covered his lips with her hand and shook her head gently. She smiled shyly but blissfully. I'm fine. Their eyes met, full of love. In the end, they secretly went to get married. Then, Chang Zhuyu brought Fang Shui back to the Chang family and announced that Fang Shui was his rightful wife. Chang Zhuyu's parents were furious. They had gone through so much trouble to find an only daughter who was not as rich as the Chang family. She had promised to help the Chang family through this difficult time after the marriage. But their son was a burden to them. The Chang family was in a mess. In the end, Fang Shui got her wish and moved into the Chang family. This family belonged to Chang Zhuyu in the future. And Fang Shui was the person he cherished the most, so the servants of the Chang family did not dare to treat Fang Shui coldly. Hence, Fang Shui's life was quite smooth. Fu Yun did not know about the Chang family's affairs. She had seen the Chang family on the news several times and even heard rumors that the Chang family was going bankrupt. At first, she did not dare to believe it. That was a domineering CEO with the male lead halo. How could he go bankrupt? But some of her friends had told her about this in private, and it was not groundless. She had heard that many aristocratic families were eyeing the Chang family covetously, trying to get a share of the profits. There were no eternal friends in aristocratic families, only eternal benefits. If there was anyone to blame, it was the Chang family's fault for being too domineering. They did not even realize that they had offended others. Now, there was a rich financial group that directly attacked the Chang family from all directions. The aristocratic families who were watching from the sidelines were shocked. They did not know when the Chang family had offended such a person. Hence, when the Chang family was in trouble, No aristocratic family was willing to take the risk to lend a helping hand. It could only be said that everyone kicks a man who is down. The Chang family's bankruptcy was within everyone's expectations, but it was beyond their expectations that they would be defeated so early. The Chang family's funds were cut off, they were unable to repay their huge debts, and there were a lot of lawsuits. When Father Chang heard the report, his vision turned black. He fell backward and fell into darkness amidst the screams of the people around him. The Chang family was finished. Before the new year, the Chang family could only declare bankruptcy. All the assets under their name were liquidated to repay their huge debts. When Chang Zhuyu saw that even the old house that his family had lived in for many years was being sealed and prepared for auction, he heard all sorts of sharp cries. His ears were ringing and his ears were ringing. Fang Shui had just gained a foothold in the Chang family when such an unforeseen event happened. She was completely stunned. How could this be? How could such a powerful aristocratic family like the Chang family fall? How was this possible? Mother Chang saw Fang Shui standing at the side in a daze in a white dress. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She pounced on Fang Shui, wanting to tear her apart. It's all your fault. You're a jinx. You've caused so much trouble for the Chang family. What sins have we committed all these years? Why do you have to harm us? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Fang Shui instinctively covered her face when she saw the sharp nails coming at her. Are you satisfied now that you've caused so much trouble for the Chang family? Why don't you go and die, jinx? It's not me. It's not. Fang Shui wanted to avoid Mother Chang's attack, but she couldn't. Everyone else was in a state of panic. They stood at the side and watched coldly. Chang Zhuyu was the first to come back to his senses. He went forward to protect Fang Shui. He pushed Mother Chang away and roared, "Enough!" The veins on his neck bulged. Mother Chang was stunned. She was stunned for a long time. Then, she fell to the ground and cried, "What sins have I committed?" Fang Shui leaned against Chang Zhuyu. Her thoughts were in a mess. She still felt that everything in front of her was unreal. The news that the Chang family was in a financial crisis was true. The Chang family owed a lot of debts. Even if they liquidated all the assets under their name, it wouldn't be enough to pay them back. She had jumped into the fire pit. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Fang Shui felt that her lower body was wet. She held her stomach and said, "It hurts." Chang Zhuyu hugged Fang Shui and asked anxiously, "Shui, what's wrong? Where does it hurt?" "My stomach." Fang Shui looked like she was in pain. Chang Zhuyu hurriedly carried Fang Shui and rushed out. "I'll take you to the hospital right now." Chapter 133. Perhaps it was because the Chang family had suffered losses in their investments this year. Although they had recovered for the time being, the Chang family could no longer bear the pressure of being besieged. Of course, the bigger reason was that the forces besieging the Chang family did not give them a chance to breathe. They were closely linked, and the Chang family could not even compromise. They could only brace themselves and face the battle, ultimately suffering a crushing defeat. This was a very beautiful business war. Everyone felt sorry for the Chang family's fall, but they were also shocked by the other party's power and vigilant. The upheaval caused by the change in the upper echelons did not affect the ordinary circle. Although the employees under the Chang family were very uneasy, they were not worried that they would lose their jobs after the new year. The Chang family had already been acquired. For the time being, the upper echelons would undergo a major change, but the employees at the bottom would not undergo any major changes. At most, they would be injected with new blood. When Fu Yun saw the news report on the Chang family, she was stunned. Not long ago, there were rumors that the Chang family was going bankrupt. Not long after, they had declared bankruptcy. Fu Yun saw the overwhelming news on the internet and television. It even made it to the top searches several times. Everyone felt sorry that such a large aristocratic family had fallen just like that. However, because of this, most people did not say anything unpleasant. At most, they sighed that the affairs of the world were impermanent. It was already pitiful enough for a proud son of heaven to fall into the dust. They should be more polite with their words. Sai Yu said to Fu Yun, "You don't have to worry about them bothering you in the future." "You did it." Fu Yun reacted and asked in surprise. Sai Yu said, "It's not just me. The Chang family has offended many people over the years. They could only blame the Chang family for being too merciless in the past. They frequently attacked Wang Po of Tianliang and caused the destruction of many families. They were too overbearing and did not leave any leeway. Who knew how many people hated the Chang family? Otherwise, Sai Yu would not have been able to topple the Chang family so quickly. Those people had put in a lot of effort, and some wanted to take advantage of the situation. She had never asked Sai Yu about his work, so she did not know what he had been doing. She also did not know much about the business world. After all, she was not in this circle. After realizing Sai Yu's true power, Fu Yun felt that only Sai Yu had the power to bankrupt the Chang family. Fu Yun felt all kinds of emotions. When she was at the peak of her anger, she thought. However, she knew what she was capable of. Without the mind of a business genius, how could she shake up a behemoth by herself? That was why she told herself to forget the past of the original body, to not care about them, and to live a new future. Now that the Chang family had fallen, Fang Shueruo and her mother had been pushed out of the circle. Living the life of an ordinary person was the biggest punishment for them. The grievances that the original body had suffered, they had returned it tenfold, 100-fold. Fu Yun's mood suddenly brightened. Everything was over. Sai Yu could not help but laugh when he saw that Fu Yun had only asked a simple question and did not intend to make a fuss about it. Okay, he had worried too much in the past. He knew it. With such an outstanding man like him, how could she be so blind as to fall for that guy from the Chang family? Sai Yu was in a good mood, so he told Fu Yun about the situation. The Fu family did not do anything this time. They did not participate. The Fu family did not do anything, whether it was to lend a helping hand or to add insult to injury. They just watched coldly from the sidelines. Fu Zonghong's health report was done at his private hospital, so Sai Yu naturally knew everything. With his current health condition, it was good enough that he could protect the Fu family. He did not have any extra energy to expand his territory. Sai Yu knew that Fu Yun had a grudge against the Fu family, so he did not say much. He only told her the situation objectively. Fu Yun's expression was indifferent. She did not have any other thoughts. There was nothing in the Fu family that made her reluctant to part with. He only heard about how the Chang family had been defeated. After satisfying his curiosity, he waved his hand nonchalantly. "I don't know about these things. Do as you see fit. It's fine as long as you didn't lose out." When Sai Yu heard this, he smiled confidently and said, "I will never lose out." Then Sai Yu told Fu Yun another piece of news. Fang Shui gave birth to a daughter. Both mother and daughter are safe. Fu Yun lamented that the female lead was lucky. There was a video on the internet. Fang Shui gave birth prematurely because she was beaten by her mother-in-law. In the end, she still gave birth. Fu Yun sighed for a while. Yes, we don't have to pay attention to them in the future. They are not from the same world. Even though she did not know if the plot of the second movie would return 20 years later, the plot had already collapsed. It would not return to its original state, right? If Fang Shui and the Chang family were tied together, their future would be uncertain. Forget it. She could not be bothered to think about it. Just as she had always said, each of them would live their own lives. Sai Yu and Wen also came to listen to the conversation between father and son behind Fu Yun's back. Sai Yu asked Wen, "How is it? What are your thoughts?" Wen was still immersed in the excitement that his father was not only good at acting, but also business. Chapter 134. Wen had been taught by Sai Yu for 3 to 4 months before he finally understood what Sai Yu wanted to teach him. Sai Yu must have sensed that he wanted to do bad things, so he wanted to correct his character. Wen had no one to teach him before, so his character was formed by many years of experience. He had seen too much evil and knew that he was not a good person. After being reborn, he had grown up in a honeypot. His character had changed a lot, but he still had the imprint of his previous life. When he met the people from his previous life, he would occasionally have thoughts of doing evil things. When Sai Yu saw the other side of his character, Wen felt very uneasy. He was afraid that Sai Yu would be disappointed in him and think that he was not the good child that Sai Yu wanted, so Sai Yu would not love him anymore. However, Sai Yu spent more energy teaching him slowly. Wen always felt that Sai Yu liked him because he was his son and not because of him. However, he felt that Sai Yu's love for him was not inferior to his mother's. Wen could not help but think that this was what people often said about a father's love being as heavy as a mountain. He smiled blissfully. Fu Yun heard Wen's laughter and turned to look at him with a smile on his face. "What are you dreaming of? Why are you so happy?" At this moment, Wen was lying on Sai Yu's shoulder and sleeping soundly. No one knew what he was dreaming of, but his little mouth was wide open and he was smiling happily. It was rare that the weather was good, so they disguised themselves and brought the child out to play. It was very tiring for the child to play crazily. They had just finished dinner when it was past 7 in the evening and they were sleepy and drowsy. Sai Yu carried the child like an ordinary family of 3 and walked leisurely among the lively crowd. Fu Yun said, "Shall we go back?" They had run up and down with the child today, so they did not have time to rest. No matter how strong they were, they would be tired if they carried the child and walked. Furthermore, if Fu Yun still remembered, Sai Yu's hands would not be able to carry heavy objects for long periods of time no matter how well he recovered. Sai Yu met Fu Yun Ruo's concerned gaze and did not reject her good intentions. Fu Yun Ruo made a phone call and then walked to the side of the road. Soon, a car stopped in front of them. After placing Wen in the child's safety chair, Fu Yun was about to get into the car when Sai Yu grabbed her hand. Fu Yun turned around in confusion. Sai Yu smiled. "Get the chauffeur and the bodyguard to send the child back. We haven't spent time alone in a long time." Sai Yu sighed in her heart. This was the difference between having a child and not having one. Especially when the child was still young, it was rare for adults to spend time with each other. This little third wheel was too much of a presence. Fu Yun Ruo hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Although they seemed to be traveling as a family of 3, there were many bodyguards in the dark to prevent any unexpected situations. Fu Yun Ruo was not worried. Hence, after Sai Yu made the request, Fu Yun Ruo thought that they did not have much time alone. After all, he was her boyfriend and she had to coax him, so she quickly agreed. The two of them walked on the streets, and there was a lot of noise around them. It was full of fireworks. It was almost the end of the year, and the streets already had a festive atmosphere. There were window decorations on the windows of the shops, and festive flower pots were placed at the door. Sai Yu reached out and held Fu Yun Ruo's hand. Their fingers intertwined. Fu Yun Ruo looked up at Sai Yu. Her face was a little hot, but she still held his hand back. The places where their palms touched transmitted warmth to each other. It was as if the two of them were blending together and getting closer to each other. Fu Yun Ruo looked at the lively fireworks and smiled. "It's almost the new year. We should prepare for the new year." Sai Yu responded softly and couldn't help but smile. Preparing for the new year was a novel and exciting experience. The next day, Fu Yun Ruo and Sai Yu brought their children to buy New Year goods. Buying new clothes was an indispensable part of the New Year's new atmosphere. Sai Yu's clothes were all custom-made, but he preferred Fu Yun Ruo to personally choose clothes for him in the shop. It was a pity that they couldn't openly shop in the big shopping malls. That would easily expose themselves. They could only go to high-end shops that paid attention to the privacy of their customers. This was the trouble of being a celebrity. At this time, many companies had started to have their New Year's break. People who went up north had returned to their hometown to reunite with their families. Even their flower beds had started to close 3 days ago. However, the capital was still very lively. There were all kinds of New Year goods in the neighborhood, but they still went out to shop and experience the lively atmosphere. Although Fu Yun Ruo didn't have any relatives in the capital, she already knew many relatives and friends. There were a lot of New Year goods to prepare. Fu Yun Ruo had already bought a batch 2 days ago and sent them back to the village by express delivery. This time, The people she wanted to buy were her relatives and friends in the capital. Although they weren't blood-related relatives, she still wanted to visit Uncle Guo's students. There were also some friends who had helped her a lot. The family of 3 went out empty-handed every day and came back with big and small bags. The 3 of them were in high spirits every day, as if they didn't know fatigue. Fu Yunruo followed the customs in the village and bought couplets, snacks, and drinks for the guests. After that, they cleaned the house together. Although they could hire someone to clean the house, doing it themselves seemed to give them a greater sense of accomplishment. With the people closest to them by their side, they didn't feel tired as they chatted and laughed with each other. Fu Yunruo looked at Wen, who surrounded her and Sai Yu every day. Her face was red and her eyes were sparkling. He was even happier than last year. Of course, it could also be that he was a year older and more sensible, so he was more lively. It could also be that his parents were by his side. Amidst the busy preparations, they welcomed the new year. On New Year's Eve, Fu Yunruo followed the village's customs. After lunch, she took out the grapefruit leaves that she had found early in the fridge and put them in the water to boil bath water. According to the traditional customs, the grapefruit leaves could wash away the bad luck on people and bring good luck to the new year. Fu Yunruo felt that Wen and Sai Yu's injuries were too unlucky. It was a good time to wash them away and have good luck next year. In addition, they also started to prepare for the New Year's Eve dinner tonight, as well as putting up couplets and window flowers. As it was the new year, Chen Shengnan went home for the holidays. There were only 4 people at home. Wen had already changed into new clothes. She was wearing a bright red children's Tang-style costume, which made Wen's little face flush. She looked like a little fairy who had walked out of a New Year painting. Uncle Guo was also wearing a Tang-style costume, which made him look hale and hearty, as if he were 10 years younger. Uncle Guo had his hands behind his back as he instructed Sai Yu to put up the couplets. Wen stepped on a small stool and spread the stickers on the table. She pasted paste on one side, then picked it up with both hands, jumped off the small stool, and ran to the French windows. She slapped the stickers on the glass and smoothed them out with her chubby little hands. Wen took a few steps back and admired her masterpiece for a moment before nodding in satisfaction. It slanted. A little more to the right. Wen looked over and saw Grandpa Guo instructing his father to put up the couplets by the door. He ran over and said excitedly, "Let me help." Fu Yunruo was preparing the New Year's Eve dinner in the kitchen. She listened to the commotion outside, and the smile on her face never faded. God had given her this fortuitous encounter and did not treat her unfairly. Wen made her feel a sense of belonging to this world, and Sai Yu filled her with anticipation for the future. Recently, Fu Yunruo rarely thought about the other world. Her memories of the past 20 years seemed to be separated by fog and gauze, so hazy that she could no longer see clearly. Sometimes, she even felt that she was the real Fu Yunruo. The so-called transmigration, the so-called other world, was just a golden millet dream of hers. Whether it was the butterfly dream Zhuangju or the butterfly dream Zhuangju, Fu Yunruo had already accepted it calmly and hoped that everyone could live happily. Sai Yu and Wen were scourges. After they finished pasting the couplets, they went to the kitchen to help. However, Wen quickly shouted out of the kitchen and followed Uncle Guo to walk around outside. Sai Yu helped Fu Yunruo as they chatted. Although there were only 4 of them, the New Year's Eve dinner was very sumptuous. Chicken, duck, and fish were indispensable. Fu Yunruo made steamed dumplings with pork and cabbage stuffing, 4 happiness meatballs, and braised carp. Sai Yu looked at the delicious dishes Fu Yunruo made. The rich aroma filled the air, and he felt that he was full of appetite at this moment. Thus, he could not help but use his chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat. It smelled so good, so delicious. Of course, Fu Yunruo's culinary skills were not as exquisite and delicious as those made by professional chefs. However, there was a sense of home in her cooking. Although it was ordinary, it made people yearn for it day and night. If Sai Yu had a choice, he would prefer to eat such dishes every day. Of course, his heart ached for Fu Yunruo. How could he bear to let her work so hard every day? It was enough for him to eat such dishes once in a while. Fu Yunruo turned around and saw Sai Yu eating secretly. Fu Yunruo. A certain celebrity's image collapsed. Sai Yu noticed Fu Yunruo's gaze and coughed lightly. However, he still did not put down his chopsticks. Instead, he said righteously, "Let me try the taste for you." Fu Yunruo asked, "How is it?" "It's the most delicious dish in the world." Fu Yunruo laughed. "How can it be so good? This was too exaggerated. Try it if you don't believe me." Sai Yu picked up a small piece of meat and placed it next to Fu Yunruo's lips. Fu Yunruo looked at Sai Yuruo. Finally, under his urging, she opened her mouth and took a bite. Sai Yu smiled. "Isn't it?" Then, he picked up another piece and put it in his mouth. Indeed, his culinary skills seemed to have improved, but at most, it was above average. Fu Yunruo's cheeks turned slightly red. Then, she said, "No matter how delicious it is, you can't eat it secretly. There are so many. I'll help you try the taste." When the sky darkened, the New Year's Eve dinner was ready. Plates of delicious food were served on the table. Fu Yunruo made a total of 12 dishes, including meat and vegetables. As there were old and young people, Sai Yu poured drinks for everyone. After the 4 of them sat down, they were not in a hurry to eat. Instead, they made a speech. As the oldest, Uncle Guo was the first to speak. The deepest and most ordinary wish of the elderly was for their children and grandchildren to be safe and healthy. Uncle Guo did not have any children and had dedicated his life to his beloved Lan Yi. Even when he was old, he still had a child like Fu Yunruo and a precious grandchild who allowed him to enjoy the joy of a family reunion. Then, Sai Yu, Fu Yunruo, and finally, Wen Wen. Wen Wen held a drink with both hands. His little face was filled with excitement. He looked at Fu Yunruo and Sai Yuruo before looking at Grandfather Guo. He felt that he was the happiest baby at this moment. In the past, he felt very blessed to have his mother by his side. Now that he had Sai Yu, his life was even more complete. Wen Wen said loudly, "In the future, we have to celebrate like this every year as a family." The adults laughed. "Come, cheers. Happy New Year. Happy New Year." After the lively reunion dinner, there were many programs. The neighborhood was not like the countryside. At this time, people would go door to door to give New Year's greetings. Especially the children, they would swarm everywhere. However, it was still very lively. The television was playing the Spring Festival Gala program, and then the adults gave out red packets. Fu Yunruo and Sai Yu also received red packets. Uncle Guo gave one each. When Sai Yu gave Wen Wen a red packet, he also gave Fu Yunruo one. When Fu Yunruo looked over, he said with a smile, "The little baby has a red packet. The big baby also has a red packet." It was obvious who the big baby was referring to. Fu Yunruo's face flushed red. In the end, she accepted the red packet. Recently, Sai Yuruo seemed to have opened up his conception and governor meridians. He was full of sweet nothings and was not as awkward as before. Wen Wen received 3 big red packets. He put them in his pocket and did not stay idle. He played the role of a sweet and happy person and made the adults beam with joy. Although they were all over the world and could not pay New Year's greetings face to face, they did not stop paying New Year's greetings via video. They first paid New Year's greetings to Sai Yu's elders. Sai Zheng and Xie Zhiyun were overflowing with love when they saw the little fairy-like grandchildren. If it were not for the fact that they could not leave their house, they would have wanted to have a family reunion. After that, Fu Yunruo had a video call with Uncle Mai and Auntie Mai. It was very lively on the other side. There were many children fighting to appear on camera and talk to Wen Wen. They obviously still remembered Wen Wen. As the adults went to support Wen Wen, they specially booked a group to watch a movie and brought the children along. The children were very proud and often mentioned Wen Wen. Naturally, they would not forget him so quickly. In addition to the New Year's atmosphere, everyone was full of joy because their hometown was changing day by day. They were full of hope for the future. Auntie Mai and Fu Yunruo talked endlessly and detailed the changes in the village. They even said that many young people in the village did not plan to go out to work this year. They all stayed at home and would start a small business or something. Even Auntie Mai and Uncle Mai's only son came back and did not plan to go out. Fu Yunruo looked at Auntie Mai's constant smile and looked much younger. Behind her, Uncle Mai tapped his pipe and relaxed his eyebrows. She thought to herself, how nice. After chatting, they sat on the sofa and ate snacks while watching the Spring Festival Gala. Every year, other than adding to the festive atmosphere of the Spring Festival, not many people would sit down to watch the Spring Festival Gala seriously. However, even if they did not watch it, every family would turn on the television to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Fu Yunruo happened to see an acquaintance among the people who went on stage to sing, so she sat down to watch. Among the celebrities wearing red robes, one of them was Xin Shu. Last year, his luck was unstoppable. He had already swept many awards in one go and became the heavenly king of the singing world. He even held several concert tours. A song composed by him swept through the entire music industry from the moment it was released. It was still at the top of the list. Although they did not have many opportunities to meet, they would still greet each other on WeChat and were still very familiar with each other. After watching it, Fu Yunruo watched another skit and was amused. In the distance outside the floor-to-ceiling window, a bright firework suddenly lit up the dark night sky. Wen turned her head and ran to the floor-to-ceiling window to look up at the night sky. "Mommy, look at the fireworks." Fu Yunruo and the others walked over to watch the fireworks with Wen. After a while, Sayu left and came out with a box. She smiled and said to them, "Let's go and play with the fireworks too." Wen ran over cheering. They went out of the house and stood in the courtyard. The cold temperature outside could not extinguish their fiery hearts. The snow in the courtyard was swept clean and decorated with festive decorations. Sayu placed the box on the ground. There were big and small fireworks inside. Sayu placed the big one on the ground and then held Wen's chubby little hand to light it together. The little guy was still young, so the adults were naturally worried about him playing with dangerous fireworks alone. A few clusters of fireworks bloomed. It was not like the large-scale fireworks outside, but it was still very beautiful. Fu Yunruo took a short video of the fireworks and sent it backstage to congratulate her fans on the Happy New Year. After the fireworks, there were only some small fireworks played by children. Wen felt that it was not enough, so she continued to play with small fireworks. Sayu walked to Fu Yunruo and asked with a smile, "Do you want to play?" Fu Yunruo smiled and waved her hand. The lights in the distance were bright and neon lights were flickering. The fireworks in the sky were brilliant like stars. In the courtyard, Wen held the small fireworks and ran around excitedly. Uncle Guo held a cup of hot tea in his hand and watched with a smile. Fu Yunruo and Sayu stood under the roof and smiled as they watched Wen play with the small fireworks. Her little face was full of smiles and she was very happy. They turned their heads to look at each other at the same time. They looked into each other's eyes, which were filled with love and tenderness. It was as if they were looking at each other for 10,000 years. End of the article. Chapter 135. After the extravaganza, Sayu, I'm so lucky to have you. Cloud rolling clouds, please take care of me. Sayu. The attached picture was a picture of the two of them wearing the same ring and holding a marriage certificate. It was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples, instantly breaking the calmness of the internet and igniting a storm. As if feeling that the power was not enough, Sayu posted another post, directly stating that Wen was his biological son and attached a picture of an authoritative identification report. As for the various reasons, as it involved the personal matters of the parties involved, please forgive me. He only said that it was his fault in the past, and now that he had obtained Fu Yun's forgiveness, he also hoped that the fans would not overinterpret. The third post was that Sayu announced that he was officially retiring from acting and was going home to inherit the family business. Oh my god, oh my god. Married? Biological son? Retiring? There are too many rumors, which one should I scream first? What does brother you mean by this? I'm going crazy. The three pieces of news were too explosive. The fans were so dizzy from the explosion that they couldn't think. Their minds were only filled with the words RRR. In less than 3 minutes, the top 20 trending topics on all major social media platforms were all related to this topic. In less than 5 minutes, all the major online platforms crashed again and again, and there was no way to fix it. It was not until 3 hours later that some platforms with larger servers barely managed to stabilize. Although 3 hours had passed, regardless of whether it was fans or bystanders, all of them were very anxious, and all kinds of comments were increasing by tens of thousands every second. Congratulations! You're finally married. Brother Yu finally has a status. Little Moon is very happy. Zai Zai is Brother Yu's biological son. Am I seeing things? Brother Yu is retiring. No woo woo, Brother Yu, don't go, to let the child have a proper status. Actually, there's no need for a duck. Regardless of whether he's related by blood or not, he's still Brother Yu's son, our baby. The comments were chaotic, and the fans were about to go crazy. There was too much information, and all of them were having trouble digesting it. Previously, they were still wishing the couple a happy marriage, but the next moment, they burst into tears. Sai Yu had actually officially retreated from the show. Then, they had to speculate about whether Wen's background was real or not, and what had happened in between. They also had to imagine the 100,000-word plot. It was too tiring, and their heads were about to explode. In the past 2 years, Sai Yu hadn't released any new works. There were rumors in the industry, and there were also private discussions among fans that their brother was going to become a behind-the-scenes producer and stop filming. However, as long as Sai Yu didn't make an official announcement, they still held on to hope. In the end, she announced her retreat. Countless fans begged Sai Yu to stay and not quit the show. Even if some of them threatened to become his haters, they couldn't change his mind. After crying, she even wished them well. In an instant, the fans experienced what it meant to have all kinds of flavors in life. The hot search lasted for an entire month. Countless fans rushed to their official social media accounts, wailing and crying. Fortunately, Yuan Xin had been monitoring the comments online, and overall, it didn't go out of control. Seeing that the popularity had finally died down, he heaved a sigh of relief. He really owed Sai Yu a lot in his previous life. He usually kept a low profile, but once he caused trouble, he made a big fuss. He also didn't understand that he was old and hadn't had a good rest for almost a month. However, he also understood that these 3 things would have to be announced sooner or later. Each of them could cause an earthquake. Sai Yu didn't want to be on the hot search list every few days, so they decided to announce them all together. That was why this month's incident happened. After the fans calmed down, they realized that everything was traceable. To be precise, it was just an official confirmation. Although Sai Yu and Fu Yun's relationship hadn't been officially announced, there were many rumors. Many fans and passers-by said that they had seen them act intimately in public, and the fans were well aware of it. After being a fan of Sai Yu for so many years, he had never been involved in any scandals. Only the scandal with Fu Yun had not been suppressed or clarified. This was a piece of news. Especially when Sai Yu accidentally appeared on camera during Fu Yun's live broadcast. Because of this, they were on the hot search list for 3 days. At that time, if Fu Yun only said that she was a friend, Sai Yu would also explain that they were friends. However, from between the lines, they felt that Sai Yu felt wronged. They even teased when they would give their brother Yu a status. They were all waiting for the official announcement and when Sai Yu would be given a status. They didn't expect that they would directly receive the news that they had registered their marriage. As for the fact that Wen was Sai Yu's biological son, there were already people who said that Wen resembled Sai Yu. They didn't look alike, but they had some small habits and temperament. However, no one took it seriously. They only felt that it was because the child had learned a lot from the adults and looked a little alike. In the end, Sai Yu threw such a huge bomb at them. Regardless of the truth, most of Sai Yu's fans believed what they said. They felt that if it wasn't true, why did they have to make such an unnecessary move? After all, if he married Fu Yun, he would be considered as a son. There was still a difference. A stepson was different from a biological son. The fans were mentally exhausted. Perhaps it was because the 3 pieces of news were too shocking that they accepted it well. Slowly, they digested the 3 pieces of news. Then, they realized that although Tsai Yu had retreated from acting, he had not completely left the entertainment industry. Recently, many high-quality films and television dramas had Tsai Yu's investment behind them. Slowly, they accepted it. It didn't matter. As long as there were traces of their brother and they knew how he was doing, it didn't matter if he didn't act anymore. If he could be a boss, he wouldn't have to work so hard as an actor. They just had to watch one less movie every year. It didn't matter. They still had their children. Compared to Tsai Yu, Wen had surpassed him. At such a young age, his acting skills were so natural and full of spirit. It was amazing. They could still be fans for 10,000 years. After Tsai Yu left the entertainment industry, his fans still silently followed him. His private life was not as tightly hidden as before. Then, from time to time, Tsai Yu's private life would spread in the fan club. Some people who still couldn't accept the fact that Tsai Yu had retreated from acting were also able to accept this situation. Brother Yu was going to inherit the family business. He was going to have a great harvest in both love and career. What else could they do? If they had money and love, who would still work so hard? Furthermore, after Tsai Yu and Fu Yun got married, he would openly appear in Fu Yun's live broadcast. From time to time, he would appear in a circle to declare his sovereignty. While the internet was boiling over, Yun's family members had mixed feelings. They were happy that their idols had found a good match, but they were also sad that their idols had been snatched away. The sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy feelings were extremely satisfying. The messages in the group chat were also constantly updated. Many of the managers of the fan club had a common group chat. They communicated with each other on how to guide the fans well and also shared their thoughts. The managers had been fans for many years. However, the internet was so big and the fan base was so large. There were always some irrational and brainless fans. However, those voices and anti-fan keyboard warriors were drowned out by the waves of blessings and didn't cause any ripples. After the fans were overjoyed, they started to the person involved and expressed that they wanted to see the wedding. They had to see their idols get married with their own eyes. They wouldn't be satisfied if they only saw the wedding photos and didn't even see the wedding photos. The popularity that had just died down instantly rose again. Everyone Tsai Yu and Fu Yun, requesting to see the wedding. Fu Yun and Tsai Yu naturally saw everyone's requests online and instantly hesitated. Her wedding with Tsai Yu would be held in the Tsai family's main house in a month's time. Now, they were preparing for the wedding. They had originally planned to keep a low profile, but so many fans wanted to see it. Fu Yun's heart softened when she saw the old fans who were usually active in the live broadcast crying. However, it wasn't appropriate for the Tsai family to be exposed. In the end, they thought of a way. When the time came, they would choose a segment of the wedding video and post it online. As for the live broadcast, it was impossible. As for the wedding photos, they had taken many of them. Fu Yun chose a portion of them and posted it online. It made the fans cry and made it to the hot search list a few times. The two of them were too compatible. They were simply the male and female leads in novels. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. Their temperament was good too. On the day of the wedding, Fu Yun and Tsai Yu only invited their close friends and family. They didn't invite the media. If the media filmed the wedding, it would shock not only China but the whole world. The royal family of each country, the business world's top talents. They were all world-class figures. Other than the relatives of the people involved, those who didn't have enough status were not qualified to receive an invitation. This was a low-key but not low-key wedding of the century. It was destined to be the center of attention. At this moment, regardless of whether it was fans or passers-by, they had already become popular. Although they couldn't know what was going on and couldn't watch the live broadcast, Fu Yun and Tsai Yu promised to release a video of the wedding. They were all looking forward to it. For the entire day, they had been waiting on social media. The news was already trending. The fans had carefully chosen the topics to give their blessings and were neatly ranked in the top 5 of the hot search list. They had already been waiting on the official account, giving their blessings and waiting. At the same time, the fans had bought huge advertising space in all the major landmark cities to express their blessings to Fu Yun and Sai Yu. The people in the city, even if they didn't care about the entertainment industry and the live broadcast industry, could see this good news when they looked up. Countless men and women were sighing. When would they also have such a happy life? Heaven didn't disappoint those who waited. They finally received the wedding video. The first video was a behind-the-scenes video. It showed Fu Yun wearing an exquisite and elegant wedding dress and putting on makeup. She was accompanied by a group of relatives and friends. They saw how Fu Yun looked in the wedding dress in the video. She was so beautiful. Now that there was a person who wanted to be a male mistress jumping up and down, they did not recognize him as a fan. They felt that it was embarrassing and even discussed in the group about how to suppress this flea. The fans expressed that this fighter jet among the rich had been a fan of their goddess for so many years, but he did not use his power to threaten or tempt their goddess. He quietly became a true love fan and never overstepped his boundaries or caused trouble. This was the role model of a true love fan. This flea was too self-righteous. Sai Yu, the true love fan who never overstepped his boundaries, hence, no one knew whether it was intentional or not, but Sai Yu fell in front of this fan who clamored that he was the one who loved Fu Yun Ruo the most. Okay, Yun Yun's number 1 fan was together with Yun Yun. Yun Yun's number 1 fan was Sai Yu, the actor who had won countless awards. Okay, they knew. What kind of love did they have? The fans could not remain calm. Every time they felt that they were full of dog food, they would find ways to stuff more dog food into their mouths. They wanted to protest. Hence, the topic online was no longer about a fan confessing to a married broadcaster, but about that scheming bastard. Fu Yun Ruo, who had also just found out about Sai Yu's identity, she looked at the calm man suspiciously. Have you been harboring ill intentions towards me since a long time ago? Fu Yun Ruo thought that Sai Yu had probably found out when she fell in love with him back then. She did not expect him to hide it so well. Sai Yu smiled innocently. How is it bad intentions? This is clearly fate. Fu Yun Ruo's face was full of disbelief. Tell me, what else are you hiding from me? Sai Yu raised his hand and swore, no, definitely not. If I'm lying to you, I'll punish Wen so that she won't be able to lose weight. Wen, who had been raised to be as round as a pearl and as smooth as jade, was suddenly cued. She raised her head in confusion. When he realized that his chubby little body had been used as an oath, he snorted heavily. In 2 years, he would be able to slim down. This oath was not effective at all. Hence, he said crisply, Mommy, Daddy is still hiding something from you. If I lie, Daddy will get fat in his middle age. Sai Yu Ruo, Fu Yun Ruo. Fat. The little brat was still the most ruthless. In order not to get fat in his middle age, Sai Yu could only come clean. I was the one who caused the Chang family to go bankrupt. Fu Yun Ruo crossed her arms. Anything else? The house next to yours was not a coincidence. I bought it on purpose. Anything else? That house of yours is actually mine too. I was the one who passed the news to you through someone else. I carefully selected that neighborhood. Anything else? The big investor in the village is me. Sai Yu had indeed hidden a lot of things from Fu Yun Ruo. Fu Yun Ruo's gaze became very dangerous. After Sai Yu finished explaining everything, he hurriedly raised his hands and said fawningly, Nothing else, really nothing else. I didn't mean to hide it from you. I was wrong. Wen had already jumped off the stool and ran away when Sai Yu was explaining everything. Then, he ran over breathlessly, carrying a durian that was bigger than his body. A pair of bright eyes peeked out from the durian. Wen placed the durian on the ground in front of Sai Yu and said excitedly, Mommy, I brought the durian over for you. Fu Yun Ruo patted Wen's head approvingly. Then, she looked at Sai Yu Ruo and said, Okay, look at how considerate your son is. You can do as you see fit. Sai Yu Ruo. This was really a good son. Chapter 136. And then there was the second part. It was a high-end nursing home on the outskirts of the capital city. It was famous for its beautiful and quiet environment, professional nursing team and privacy. Many rich and powerful retired people in the capital city would stay here for a period of time, and many of them would enjoy their retirement here. On a quiet green path, a caregiver pushed a grey-haired, doddering old man out for a stroll. And the man in the wheelchair was Fu Zonghong. Over the past 3 to 4 years, his body had aged very quickly. He had forced himself to take charge of the Fu family in the hope that he could hand over the prosperous Fu family to Wen in the future. But his body would not be able to hold on until the day when Wen grew up. After the company collapsed one time, his health deteriorated and he no longer had the energy to take charge of such a big company. Luckily, he was prepared and had groomed a capable agent to take over the company. Luckily, the handover was timely and the agent was very capable. Soon, Fu's enterprise, which was in chaos because of Fu Zonghong's collapse, was stabilized. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, Fu Zonghong lived in the nursing home with peace of mind. The nurse pushed him to the side of a lake. In front of him was a green lake surrounded by green grass. Because the lake was running water, there were many fish in it. The elderly who were free would come over to fish to kill time. There were also children who came to visit and accompany the elderly playing on the grass. Even he could hear their childish laughter clearly. Fu Zonghong looked at the peaceful and lively scene in front of him. His eyebrows relaxed and he could not help but smile. His eyes, which were already a little cloudy, were suddenly enlightened. He thought of the grandchildren he rarely saw and his daughter. Now that they had found a good home, he could rest assured. Fu Zonghong went to attend his daughter's wedding 2 years ago. Unfortunately, he could only watch from afar and could not bring his daughter to a new life as a father. He could not give her his blessings in person either. He was even afraid that she would be unhappy to see him, so he could only watch from afar. He hoped that he could be forgiven by Fu Yunruo, but he realized that he might not be able to live until that day. All these years, the more he thought about the past, the more guilty he felt. He had let Fu Yun down. After so many years of what he had done, no matter how warm her heart was, it had been broken by him. The mistake had already been made. Even if Fu Zonghong wanted to make amends, she no longer needed it. Ever since Fu Yun told him that the person who had the right to forgive him was no longer around, he had countless nightmares. He dreamed that his daughter had left the world alone because of his coldness and neglect. He was awakened countless times, his heart filled with grief. However, Fang Wanping's attitude changed after the Chang family went bankrupt and was driven out of the capital in a sorry state. It was as if the Chang family had become a burden to her, and she was worried that they would cling on to her. The money and property that Fu Zonghong gave her was her only source of income. She would definitely hold on to it tightly and wouldn't let anyone take it away from her, even if it was her own daughter. Fu Zonghong said lightly, "I don't want to see her." Then he said, "Push me back." Other people's family happiness was always his extravagant wish. Fu Zonghong didn't think about anything else. The only thing he wanted was to hand over the Fu family to Fu Yun and her daughter before he died. Although it was a nursing home, it wasn't the kind that had multiple rooms on one floor where the elderly lived. Instead, it was a standalone villa. Every villa was accompanied by a complete professional team. The annual expenses were very high, but those who could live in it were all rich. When he returned to the villa, his assistant, who had been the vice president for many years, came to see Fu Zonghong. When Fu Zonghong saw the vice president, he asked, "Did he agree to see you?" The vice president bowed slightly and answered respectfully, "Yes, he said that he will come to visit you in 2 days' time." Fu Zonghong's eyebrows relaxed slightly. At the entrance of the nursing home, Fang Wanting heard the security guards reply again. She bit her lips and left unwillingly. She hadn't had an easy time in the past few years. Although compared to most people, her life was much better, but there was always a comparison. No matter what, It couldn't be compared to the good life when she was Madame Fu. After living a pampered life for 20 years, how could she be willing to go back to the days when she had to think twice about buying jewelry? Fang Wanting always felt that she didn't do anything and that she was implicated by Fang Shui. Even if Fu Zonghong was angry with her, it had been a long time, right? Unfortunately, a few years had passed and she still hadn't found a chance to get close to him. When she found out that he was staying at the nursing home, she went to check in every day. She felt that Fu Zonghong, who was alone in the nursing home, needed someone to take care of him. If she expressed her concern and sincerity, wouldn't he be more soft-hearted? Fang Wanting had a good plan, but she didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to see him until now. She could only look for other opportunities. 2 days later, a handsome man in casual clothes and sunglasses appeared at the nursing home surrounded by bodyguards. Not long after, he stood in front of Fu Zonghong. Chairman Fu. Fu Zonghong's face tensed up. Sai Yu. Fu Zonghong's gaze swept behind him. He was slightly disappointed when he didn't see the person he wanted to see. The person who came was Sai Yu. Have a seat. Chapter 137. A Dream of Golden Millet 1. Hey. Wake up, don't pretend to be asleep. Wake up. Wen was woken up by the cold. Specifically, it was not because of the cold, but because of the discomfort in his body. He clutched his head and sat up dizzily. A dirty kid wearing patched clothes saw that the little bean on the ground had woken up and quickly retracted his foot. Then, he said angrily, I knew you were faking it. I'm telling you, Kai Wen. In the future, you better obediently give me your steamed buns. Otherwise, I'll hit you again, okay? Wen felt pain everywhere. He had a headache, was dizzy, and his stomach was cramping from hunger. He felt weak all over, and his limbs were aching. He was also very cold. However, there was still a cacophony of noise in his ears. Wen impatiently scolded, "Shut up." The voice that came out of his mouth was soft and full of childishness. Wen was stunned for a moment. Ever since his little body started to twitch, his childishness had slowly faded. It had the crispness and vitality of a youth. This childishness, did he have this voice when he was 3 or 4 years old? When the kid heard the scolding on the ground, he immediately kicked him. You little brat, are you tired of living? How dare you scold me? See if I don't. Kai Da Qian, are you bullying a child again? An adult's voice sounded. The child named Kai Da Qian quickly withdrew his foot and ran away before the adult came over. Kai Da Qian? Wen took a long time to recall this name from his dizzy head. Not long after, a short but very stout woman walked over cursing. Hurry up and come over here. Why are you lying on the ground? You dirtied your clothes and want to change, right? Do you have anything to change into? Kai Wen. I'm talking to you. Hurry up and get up. Kai Wen. Wen raised his head and saw a familiar face in the depths of his memory. After a long time, he remembered that this was Mother Mo from the orphanage. Wen's expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and looked around. What he saw was a dilapidated and desolate courtyard, and he was sitting on the dirty ground. This was an orphanage. Was he reborn again? Wen lowered his head and looked at his black, claw-like hands. Was this when he was reborn in the orphanage? What about Mom? Was his mother still around at this time? Wen was terrified. Then, he was rudely pulled up. You brat, you don't want to live anymore? You didn't even respond when I called you. Wen raised her head, her unusually large eyes filled with tears. Mother Mo still wanted to scold her, but she didn't do it in the end. Instead, she walked away while cursing. Cry, cry, cry. Will you get candy if you cry? Wen stood alone for a moment before she calmed down. Wen thought that he must calm down. He had to find a way to leave the orphanage and find his parents first. Wen wiped her tears, leaving an even darker mark on her face. He rubbed his stomach. He was so hungry that he didn't feel hungry at all. He had to figure out his situation first. Wen dragged his sore and weak body into the house. He had been pampered and spoiled for more than 10 years. Whenever there was a cut on his hand, there would be a circle of people around him to feel sorry for him. Now, his whole body hurt, but there was no one around him to feel sorry for him. Wen felt even more wronged, and tears almost came out of his eyes. What was going on? He was just sleeping. Why did he return to his childhood in his previous life when he woke up? He didn't want to experience it again. He was living so happily now. Why did he have to be reborn? Could it be that it was just a dream? Could it be that this was his real rebirth? No, it couldn't be. His experience was so real. It couldn't be a dream. He must have a chance to go back. Wen's thoughts ran wild as he entered the house. On the other side of the corridor, a thin and weak child timidly poked his head out. When he saw Wen looking over, the child slowly walked out. He grabbed the corner of his dirty clothes and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Wen. I didn't run away on purpose. I was afraid that he wanted to snatch my steamed buns too." Wen looked at him. Looking at the child who was half a head taller than him, he felt that he looked familiar. However, he had already forgotten his name. He only remembered that he hadn't seen him since he grew up. Wen didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Take me back to my room." He needed to lie down and organize his thoughts. However, he had already forgotten where he lived. He could only let the child in front of him take him there. Oh. The child hurriedly led Wen forward and pushed open an old door with peeling paint. Wen looked around. There were more than 10 densely packed old bunk beds. Other than the bed, there wasn't even a cabinet in the room. The child's belongings were basically piled up on his bed. It was a mess. However, the children didn't have much of their own belongings. "Which bed is mine? I want to lie down." The child hurriedly pointed to the outermost bunk bed and hurriedly said, "Hurry up and lie down." After Wen lay down, the child said worriedly, "Wen, are you okay? Did you hit your head?" The child remembered that before he ran away, he saw Wen hit his head with his fist. Wen opened his eyes and looked at the dark ceiling of the bed. He didn't say anything. It wasn't that he was cold, but he felt uncomfortable everywhere. His whole body was soft and weak. He just wanted to sleep and never wake up. He didn't know if he would go back the moment he opened his eyes after falling asleep. The child hesitated for a moment. He found half a steamed bun that he had just hidden under his bed. After thinking for a moment, he carefully broke off a quarter of the steamed bun and hid it back. Then, he took the big steamed bun and ran over to Wen. He reluctantly said, "Hurry up and eat it." Wen opened his eyes and looked at the cold and hard steamed bun in his hand. He didn't care that it was dirty. He hurriedly put it into his mouth. After 2 bites, he swallowed it. "Water." The child hurriedly patted Wen's back. "How are you? Are you okay?" "There's no water at home." They had to go to the canteen to drink water. They didn't have water here. Wen choked for a long time before he recovered. This time, he slowly ate the steamed bun in small mouthfuls. Was his life in the orphanage so difficult? The child swallowed his saliva and looked at Wen. "I'll give you the steamed bun. You won't ignore me, right? If I don't run away, Chen will definitely snatch both of our steamed bun." Wen finished half of the cold and hard steamed bun. With some food in his stomach, he felt even hungrier. However, he finally had a little strength. Under the child's nagging, he finally remembered which year he had returned to. He was 6 years old now. He remembered that at this time, the canteen's dinner was a steamed bun. However, the uncle in the canteen didn't want to wait for them to finish eating. He wanted to close the door and leave early, so he chased them out of the canteen and locked the door. The food in the canteen wasn't enough to fill their stomachs every day. They were hungry every day. Therefore, when the adults left, the older children who were more domineering would snatch the steamed buns from the younger children. Chen wanted to snatch Wen's steamed bun. When the other children saw the older children snatching it, they quickly ran away, afraid that they would be snatched away too. Of course, Wen wouldn't let it happen. Therefore, he fought with Kai Chen. Kai Wen had been hungry since he was young. He was skinny and skinny. At the age of 6, he was shorter than a 3 or 4-year-old child. Even if he had a fierce spirit in his bones, he couldn't beat Kai Chen, who was a few years older and stronger than him. Kai Wen remembered that he was knocked unconscious and laid on the cold ground for half a day. In the end, he even had a fever. The director scolded him for half a month because he wasted money. Kai Wen thought to himself. So it was at this time. But now that he was here and hadn't been lying on the ground for long, he shouldn't be sick. Kai Wen lay on the bed for a while. Then, he suddenly sat up. The child who had been rambling on and on was startled, and then he shut his mouth. Kai Wen looked at the child in front of him. "What's your name?" The child looked at Kai Wen. Suddenly, he pouted and tears flowed down his face. "Kai Wen, is your head really damaged? Don't you remember me? I'm Dudu." Kai Wen's head hurt from the crying. "I remember. This Dudu used to follow him around when he was young. He was 1 year younger than him. Although he was also skinny, he was taller than him." Dudu wasn't in the orphanage when he was a baby. He was sent here half a year ago. He remembered that not long after, Dudu was adopted. After that, there was no news of him. Dudu's eyes were brimming with tears. "Really? Really?" Kai Wen got off the bed and looked at Dudu. "Follow me." Dudu wiped his tears and followed behind Kai Wen. "Where are we going?" "We're going to look for food." Of course, he wanted to look for food while he still had some energy. He really didn't know how he survived in the past. Now, he felt like he was going to starve to death at any time. Oh, the only place to eat in the orphanage was the kitchen. Hence, Kai Wen brought Dudu to the kitchen first. The door to the canteen was locked. They couldn't enter, so naturally, they couldn't enter the kitchen. The door lock was invincible to children, but to Kai Wen, who had the intelligence of an adult, it was a piece of cake. Kai Wen asked Dudu to keep a lookout for him. Then, he found some tools and after a while, he managed to unlock a very simple lock. Kai Wen quietly went in and closed the door. Although it was called a canteen, it was actually a small room of about 20 to 30 square meters. There were small tattered tables and stools in the room. On the other side of the small room, there was a door. This was the kitchen. The kitchen wasn't big. Although this was an orphanage, there weren't many orphans. Hence, there weren't many government subsidies. Moreover, the internet wasn't very developed. Their source of income was the occasional donations from the nearby residents. Their clothes and toys were all donated by the nearby residents. In addition, they also had the savings of the director, which barely supported them. Hence, Kai Wen didn't hate the director. Although the director was fierce and didn't treat them well, he still gave them a place to stay. However, he really hated this uncle who cooked for them every day. Originally, with their source of income, they could have enough to eat and wear. However, a part of the money used to buy ingredients was embezzled by this uncle. That was why they had to suffer so much. The director also trusted this uncle chef very much. This uncle chef was a distant relative of his. He came over to help enthusiastically and didn't ask for a high salary. Hence, he had always trusted this uncle chef. Perhaps because he trusted the lock on the outside, the kitchen door wasn't locked. It was just ajar. Kai Wen went in and looked around. There were very few ingredients in the kitchen. It was impossible to have meat. There were only a few green vegetables. They were yellow and withered. Presumably, they were their lunch dishes. The most abundant thing in the kitchen was rice. However, they wouldn't be able to eat rice. That was a treat that only happened during festivals. Usually, they would only eat porridge. In the end, Kai Wen took a small pot and grabbed a few handfuls of rice. He knew that this pot was used by the chef for special treatment. There were only 3 green vegetables. If one was missing, it would be discovered immediately. However, if the rice was missing, it might not be discovered. Wen wanted to cook a few more times. Hence, he took some rice and matches with him. When he came out, he would lock the door again. At night, he would sneak back in to return the pot. Dudu was shocked when she saw Kai Wen come out with a small pot. Kai Wen shushed her and left secretly with Dudu. The location of the orphanage was very desolate. Kai Wen and Dudu found a secluded place. They found some firewood, washed the rice, and cooked it. Then, they shared it. Dudu smacked her lips in satisfaction. She touched her stomach and said, "It's so delicious." So this is the feeling of being full. Wen was also full. They had been hungry for a long time. Their appetite had long become small. Half a bowl of rice was enough to fill them up. At this time, the sky was a little dark. Now that it was autumn, the weather began to turn cold. They didn't have many thick clothes. It was estimated that this year would be difficult for them again. Wen looked at his black claws and seemed to smell something strange. After temporarily solving the problem of food and clothing, Kai Wen paid attention to himself. He couldn't stand the dirt on his body, so he went to a nearby canal and began to wash his hands. The water was cold. As soon as he put his hands down, he was shocked by the cold. He dipped his hands into the water. The dirty water immediately spread. He hurriedly rubbed his hands again and again. Dudu looked at Kai Wen curiously. After washing his hands and feet, he washed his face. "Kai Wen, aren't you afraid of the cold?" "I am." But he was more afraid of being dirty. If the water wasn't so cold, he would have washed his whole body. He always felt uncomfortable being dirty. Kai Wen rubbed his skin until it turned red. After a long time, he stopped. With this condition, he could only wash like this. Then, he ran back to the orphanage with Dudu. Running could warm the body. At this time, the sky was completely dark. Kai Wen first hid the pot and the matches in a secluded corner near the kitchen. Then, he went back to the house. From afar, they heard the director's loud voice. "Where the hell are you? Hurry up and come back to sleep." Dudu shrunk her neck and subconsciously pulled the corner of Kai Wen's clothes. Kai Wen reminded her, "Do you still remember what I said?" Dudu hurriedly nodded. Yes. He definitely wouldn't let the cat out of the bag. He still wanted to eat his fill. Then, Kai Wen brought Dudu back. After entering the house where they slept, the director's loud voice was no longer blocked. It was very loud and clear. There were already a few children lying on the bed in the house. All the children in the orphanage were in this room. There were a total of 11 children. The older children slept on the top bunk, and the younger children slept on the bottom bunk. "Is everyone here? If you are, hurry up and turn off the lights and sleep. Don't waste electricity." Kai Wen and Dudu hurriedly went to their beds. Seeing that everyone was lying down, the director turned off the lights and closed the door. Then, she left. Kai Wen lay on the cold and hard bed. For a long time, he didn't move. The house was silent. There wasn't much entertainment in the orphanage. Even if the children didn't know anything, they knew that if they slept more, they wouldn't feel so uncomfortably hungry. Therefore, once the sky turned dark, they would lie on the bed. During the day, other than when it was time to eat, the other children would go around looking for food. The director didn't restrict the older children from going out. As for the younger children, they were all left in the orphanage. They were not allowed to go out so that they wouldn't be kidnapped and become beggars. Kai Wen closed his eyes and began to sleep. He prayed in his heart that he would be back when he woke up. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.